Thousands of men struck gold during the California gold rush, but not all of them lived long enough to spend it. Somewhere between the rivers of California and the long road home, fortunes vanished, not stolen by banks, not lost in markets, but buried, abandoned, and forgotten. Men traveled alone with pockets full of gold dust and nuggets, knowing that if the wrong person found out, they might not survive the night. So they hid it, along trails, near rivers, in places they swore they would return to. Many never did. Before we go further, if you're fascinated by real treasure stories, lost gold, and the forgotten side of American history, make sure to subscribe to the channel. New stories like this are coming, and you won't want to miss what's next. Now imagine this. A lone 49er standing on a trail at dusk, a heavy pouch of gold at his side. No map, no protection, and miles of wilderness ahead. This is the story of the lost gold of the 49ers and the treasure that never made it home. The 49ers were not professional miners. Most of them had never seen gold in their lives before arriving in California. They were farmers from the Midwest, sailors who abandoned ships in San Francisco Bay, shop clerks, laborers, immigrants, and young men who believed this might be their only chance to escape poverty. They came with hope, not skill. Few understood mining. Fewer still understood survival in the wilderness. Many arrived with nothing more than a shovel, a pan, and rumors that promised easy riches. What they found instead was exhaustion. Long days standing in freezing rivers. Nights spent in crude camps. Food that ran out too quickly. Prices that drained gold faster than it could be found. And yet, some of them struck it rich. Not fortunes like the legends describe, but enough. Enough to change a life back home. Enough to buy land, start a business, or secure a future that once felt impossible. That's when the danger truly began. Because in the gold fields, wealth had no protection. There were no banks nearby, no safes, no police force strong enough to keep order. Gold dust was carried in small pouches, hidden in boots, sewn into coats, or wrapped in cloth and tied close to the body. Everyone knew who had been lucky, and everyone was watching. The moment a 49er decided to leave California, he carried more than gold. He carried a target. In the gold fields of California, showing success was dangerous. Gold was everywhere, and nowhere safe. A miner who struck gold faced an immediate problem: how to keep it. There were no reliable banks in the wilderness. Even when banks did appear, many 49ers didn't trust them. Stories spread quickly about robberies, fraud, and institutions collapsing overnight. But the greatest threat wasn't distance or poor security. It was people. Word traveled fast in mining camps. A man who suddenly stopped working, packed his gear, or paid in gold dust drew attention immediately. Eyes followed him. Questions were asked, and sometimes knives came out. So miners learned to hide what they found. Some buried their gold near camps, marking the spot with rocks or trees they believed they would recognize later. Others hid small caches along trails, planning to retrieve them in stages during the journey home. Gold was sewn into clothing, packed into false bottoms of chests, wrapped in oilcloth and lowered into shallow pits at night. The idea was simple. If something went wrong, at least not everything would be lost. But hiding gold created a new danger. Once it was buried, the miner had to survive long enough to return. Many did not. For many 49ers, the most dangerous part of the gold rush wasn't finding gold. It was leaving with it. The journey home was long, uncertain, and often deadly. Some chose to cross deserts where water vanished for days at a time. Others attempted mountain passes that could turn lethal without warning. A few boarded ships, only to face storms, disease, and shipwrecks. And all of them carried gold. Heavy, valuable, impossible to hide completely. Along the trails, evidence of failure was everywhere. Broken wagons abandoned in the dust. Personal belongings scattered where someone had collapsed. Graves marked with crude wooden crosses, or not marked at all. Some miners realized they could no longer continue. Exhaustion, illness, or injury forced them to stop. When that happened, they faced an impossible choice: carry the gold and die with it, or bury it and hope to return. Many chose the second option. Pouches of gold dust were buried beside trails, under distinctive rocks, or near twisted trees. Nuggets were hidden in shallow pits, covered quickly before moving on. The intention was always the same: I'll come back. But the road didn't care about intentions. Heat, thirst, and disease claimed countless lives. Bandits watched the trails carefully, knowing that a lone traveler was likely carrying something worth killing for. Some miners were robbed, some were murdered, and some simply vanished, leaving their gold behind, waiting for someone who would never return. Not every 49er who left California arrived home. In fact, thousands never arrived anywhere at all. They simply disappeared. Some vanished along well-traveled trails where wagons passed every day. Others were last seen heading into remote valleys or crossing deserts alone, convinced they could save time by taking a shortcut. Their stories ended abruptly. A journal found beside a dried riverbed. A campfire ring with no tracks leading away. A wagon discovered days later, intact but empty. Sometimes fellow travelers found bodies. Sometimes they found nothing but silence. What made these disappearances especially haunting was what followed. Families back east waited for letters that never came. Years later, rumors surfaced that someone had seen a familiar face in another town under another name. But most were never confirmed. And with every man who vanished, so did whatever gold he carried. Buried caches were left without owners. Hidden pouches lay untouched beneath soil and stone. Simple markings, a scratched symbol on a rock, a bent tree branch, lost their meaning once the person who placed them was gone. Nature moved in quickly. Rain erased trails. Plants grew over disturbed earth. Landscapes changed. Within months, even careful hiding places became invisible. What remained were fragments of stories, and the unsettling idea that untold amounts of gold were left behind, not by accident, but by death. As the years passed, the disappearances of miners slowly turned into legends. And those legends almost always ended the same way. With hidden gold, stories began circulating about men who had buried their fortunes before attempting the journey home. Small groups whispered about caches hidden along rivers, beneath boulders, or near distinctive landmarks, places only the original owner was supposed to recognize. Some miners kept crude maps, not professional charts, but rough sketches scratched into notebooks or drawn on scraps of paper. A bend in a river, 3 tall trees, a rock shaped like an arrow, directions that made perfect sense to the person who created them, and almost no sense to anyone else. Many of these maps were lost, burned in fires, destroyed by water, thrown away by people who didn't understand their value. Others survived, but without context. A map is only useful if you know where to start. Over time, treasure hunters and historians try to follow these clues. They searched old trails and campsites. They compared journals and letters, hoping patterns would emerge. Sometimes they found something. A rusted tin once used to hold gold dust. A piece of oilcloth buried beneath stones. A single nugget missed by time, but never enough to solve the mystery completely. Because most of the 49ers who hid their gold did so in desperation, not precision. They buried it quickly. They marked it imperfectly. And then they disappeared, leaving behind treasure and no one who could truly claim it. At first glance, it seems impossible. How could so much gold simply disappear? The answer lies in a combination of time, nature, and human error. The 49ers were not thinking long-term. When they hid their gold, they did so under pressure, exhaustion, fear, illness, or the threat of violence. They chose locations that felt obvious in the moment, trusting their memory to guide them back. But memory is fragile. A rock that stood alone in 1850 might be surrounded by others decades later. A tree used as a marker might fall, burn, or rot away. Rivers change course. Floods rearrange entire landscapes. What once felt permanent vanished. Then there is the problem of death. Many miners never had the chance to return. Others survived but lost their maps. Some were too ashamed to admit they had failed. Others feared that revealing a hiding place would attract thieves, even years later. And some likely chose silence. Because hidden gold creates questions, and questions attract danger. Even when people went looking, they rarely searched the right places. The trails of the gold rush stretched thousands of miles. Caches were scattered, small, and deliberately concealed. There was no single treasure to recover, only fragments, waiting in silence. In recent decades, the story of the 49ers has stopped being just history, because people have begun to find what they left behind. Modern hikers, metal detectorists, and amateur historians have uncovered gold along old wagon routes, near forgotten camps, and beside rivers that once guided thousands westward. These aren't massive hoards, but they are real. Gold coins wrapped in decayed cloth. Small glass bottles once used to store gold dust. Nuggets hidden in places that make no sense unless you know the story. In some cases, discoveries happen by accident. A hiker noticed an unusual signal on a metal detector. A camper found a rusted tin beneath a rock overhang. Someone digging for a campfire pit struck something heavy and unmistakable. What connects these finds is location. They appear where 49ers once passed, where men rested, where fear might have forced someone to hide what they carried, just in case. Most discoveries are kept quiet. Land laws are complicated. Public attention brings problems. And anyone who understands the history knows that finding gold is only the beginning of a much larger question. Wolves might come looking. And so, just like in the 1850s, silence often follows discovery. The idea of lost gold makes people uneasy, not because of greed, but because of what it implies. If gold from the gold rush is still being found today, then it means something important was never resolved. It means history didn't end cleanly. That the story we tell of men finding gold, going home, and starting new lives is only partly true. The other part is harder to accept. It's the part where people failed, where plans collapsed, where men died alone with their fortunes buried nearby. Lost gold forces us to confront how fragile success really was during the gold rush. One illness, one wrong turn, one encounter with the wrong person, and everything could be lost. That's uncomfortable because it turns the gold rush from a story of opportunity into a story of risk. And it suggests that beneath familiar landscapes, trails, rivers, campsites visited by tourists today, there may still be traces of unfinished lives. Not just gold, but decisions that never had a second chance. Perhaps that is why the subject remains so compelling. Because lost gold isn't just about wealth. It's about endings that never came. Somewhere along the old trails of the American West, the story of the 49ers is still unfinished. Not in books, not in museums, but beneath the ground itself. Gold was buried in fear, hidden in desperation, left behind by men who believed they would return. Most never did. Their gold stayed where it was placed, untouched by time, unnoticed by history, waiting silently while the world moved on above it. Today, people walk those same trails without realizing what may lie just beneath their feet. Rivers still flow where miners once stood. Hills still rise where wagons broke apart and men made impossible choices. And sometimes the past answers back. A signal from a metal detector, a glint in disturbed soil, a piece of gold that hasn't seen daylight since the 1850s. If you're drawn to real treasure stories, lost gold, and the forgotten side of American history, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. There are many more stories like this, and some of them may be closer than you think. And now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe there is still lost gold from the 49ers waiting to be found today? Or do you think most of it has already been discovered or lost forever? If you had the chance, would you search for it? Share your thoughts in the comments. Because some treasures aren't just about gold. They're about the lives that never got a second chance to return for it.